What is going on, Redmaster here, and welcome back to another video. Today, we have some exciting news for Cards and Castles. That's right, a new expansion has been officially announced on the official Reddit page, and it's looking to be a very good, a very strong expansion. It's titled the Enchanted Grove. I don't think, yeah, I cut off the top part of the name in the video, but that's okay. It's called the Enchanted Grove, and it's gearing up to be a very, very big overhaul slash expansion. Mainly overhaul though, by the looks of this. There's not a lot of new cards coming, but um, we'll just jump right into it and we'll see what's going on. So the biggest thing that's got a lot of people talking right now is the sixth faction. That's right, another faction has been added into the game. Excuse me, and we haven't seen a new faction since Ninjas several years ago. Several years ago. So seeing a new faction emerge is definitely intriguing. It brings a lot of new aspects into the game. Not only, archetypes and, deck combinations, but also abilities and, potential for new cards, stuff like that. So it's good to see that they're emerging. We also have faction identities returning. For those of you who might be unclear of what that means, um, they're basically taking a lot of neutral cards and putting them back towards factions. So gameplay is going to be a lot more. If you see these colors, you're not gonna have you'll be seeing some certain units and not a lot of neutrals. Essentially, they're sort of limiting the neutral card options, so a lot of repeats they don't show up in the same deck, which is good. It brings a lot more diversity back to the game. There's also trap cards. A new mechanic of cards are apparently coming out now. Trap cards, which allows all factions to set up secret traps that can activate on your opponent's turn. Some more on, well, not some more on that later. We'll touch up on it now. I don't know why I just said that. Essentially, trap cards seem to be like these hitting cards that activate, of course, like it says on here, your opponent's turn. What they can be like, though, we're not totally sure, as it's not a lot of, information given in this post to indicate what kind of trap cards are going to show up. But it's interesting to see, along with the sixth faction, a new mechanic of cards as well, the trap cards. Interesting to see how that goes in the future. And a general revamp of numbers and formulas, more powerful spells, sturdier castle, and less ability to punish aggressive positions. So that's really cool to see. A general revamp of numbers and formulas. So they've really looked into what's been going on for the past several months and have really tweaked themselves, really, fine-tuned a lot of, you know, from card stats to overall numbers and formulas of the game, and I think they're really trying to fine tune this to create a more enjoyable game, in my opinion. So, of course, we can see later down the post for this release, the team went back to examining core gameplay with basic cards to identify ways we could improve the pacing and momentum of the game. Traditionally, the game has allowed for tempo swings too easily and too frequently, leading players to play, I lost my place, a conservative game, and generally not take aggressive positions until late game. Of course, this ties into the change that was made last summer. As they state, we reduced the HP of the castle from 20 to 12 as a way to reward more aggressive positioning with a potential early kill. It worked in improving the player's experience without changing the card pool too much. So, in some cases, the 20 to 12 was a success in their eyes, but only in some ways. They do admit that it was flawed in a lot of areas, but they're saying one of the positives that came out of it was the experience without changing the card pool too much. So people were able to learn, people were able to gain experience and knowledge from that, which is all right. Um, of course, it says, yeah, but came with some significant downsides. A lower HP pool means players can sometimes be surprised by how quickly they die and feel that their position is too fragile to allow for interesting setups and longer planned decks. Of course, we saw that, between the several months of gameplay, that people were just trying to create these effective, fast-paced decks and sort of kill off the longer term setup decks. Of course, with 12 HP, since you didn't have a lot of room to create those setups, it sort of got, to the point where people were beginning to get frustrated. and they admit that it was not the best of plans. By focusing on core mechanics and basic cards, we were able to come up with a rule set that feels more fair for all sides and address the actual issue of tempo swings directly at the cost of majorly changing the game. So they've addressed this issue, and basically what they said is now we've overhauled a lot of things for this to be more successful. And of course, the biggest note, another big note down here as we get a little further on. So castles now have 20 HP, but we have nerfed or removed most ways for players to significantly punish an attacker directly from the hand. Of course, they're probably meaning burn spells, range units, things that can't be really pocketed in your hand to create this sort of attacking, this punishing aggression. And as you can see, another big change that maybe didn't get pointed out too much. I mean, if you've read this fully, you probably saw it, but those who skimmed through it probably didn't see it. Range units cannot attack immediately when they are played. That's huge. That's very big to a lot of what's going on in the current live game. Actually, a lot of the meta, as we talked about in the Meta Monthly, is focused on Sume and her ability, or him, her, I don't know what it is. Sume's ability to directly attack from the hand and bouncing things like that. So it's really interesting to see that now range has this sort of sluggish. Playtesting identified the ability to punish attackers directly from the hand with a range unit, gaining massive board presence at 0 risk to be the most significant deterrent. Sorry, I just butchered that word. To attacking. Deterrent. Yeah, that was it. So they've identified how sort of the range units acted, like I just mentioned, attacking directly from the hand, pocketing that damage, and of course, most notably with mages like Sume and whatnot. And of course, they had 0 risk to playing those cards, so it's very interesting to see that sort of happen. All the range units now have sluggish, which is a very good change. But let's take a look at what it says further on. So further down in the post, we see melee units have been mostly standardized to 3 movement with special card text for units that can move 4 or 2. Units that move 2 also cannot attack the same turn they are played. The sluggish, again because they tend to have higher stats and were too potently used as value-add castle defenders. Many units that were previously slow or fast have been changed to a standard 3-move unit with different abilities, and the slow attribute is used sparingly, and the fast for 4 movements is exclusive to ninjas. So I kind of cut this part out of what you currently see on your screen, but what this does, or what its intention is essentially now there is a universal movement for cards from, it's down to 3 movement. A lot of cards have a universal 3 movement unless otherwise specified by slow or fast. Another big change to the game, this means that a lot of units that were previously maybe 2 movement or 4 movement now have, again, a standard set. So it's going to be a little odd trying to get used to now everything having a 3 movement except for specified things, as they said. Slow is used sparingly, and fast you can only find in ninjas, so that's pretty interesting. It probably reinforces that ninjas are going to be attributed to movement in this overhaul, and they're going to try and keep any sort of fast units in this faction, which is pretty good. It means that you won't see a lot of 4 movement trickery unless you are facing ninjas. So as we read further down, combat abilities such as Chain Lightning and Combo now activate as a unit counterattack. So this is a little minor detail that is also pretty important. Of course, units that have sort of an ability that activates when they attack, it can now also be procced on a retaliation. That's pretty big too. So retaliation is not really a thing anymore. It is in some regards, which we'll get to hopefully in a minute. But a lot of retaliation is now just, it happens, with these kind of abilities as well. Chain Lightning Combo, anything that requires an attack for it to activate now will work on a retaliation. So again, pretty big there. We also read further down, of course, factions are now much more restricted in the mechanics they possess. We did mention that earlier in the first part of the post. Of course, this just means that it's gameplay less unpredictable, and you can now rule out significant options for your opponent based on the faction that they are using. So it's giving the factions more of an identity, more of, their this is what will only be in warlocks, pirates, Vikings, etc., which is very cool. It means that now we won't see the same thing in almost every deck. Now it's going to be based on factions, which is very important. Um, we gonna get down to those as you can see in the following posts. So let's just jump right into it. Crusaders are a defensive faction possessing powerful healing and damage absorption abilities and card draw mechanics. So before we get into it, it's sort of interesting that what they're doing here. They're kind of detailing what kind of abilities will be in certain factions, which is great. It can get people time to prepare and actually learn some of the newer abilities that are being added to this game, because there are, from my experience, new abilities that will take some time getting used to, but they definitely add a lot more to the game, a lot more uniqueness for each faction. So it's interesting that they're detailing these to us now, so players can get that sense of, all right, maybe I should start looking into these, maybe I should start learning these. So as I was saying, Crusaders are a defensive faction. Of course, I already read that. I might as well just jump right into the abilities. So Crusaders possess Resolve the first time this unit would die. It instead survives 1 health. Armor, absorb the first X damage dealt to this unit each turn, and when this unit is, and Judgment, I should say, when this unit is attacked, it deals X damage to the attacker. Pretty interesting stuff right there. So these three abilities sort of illustrate or sort of give meaning to Crusaders as a health-based faction. Resolve, if this unit was about to die, it survives with 1 health. So basically, if you take out a unit, it's just going to come back with 1 health. It doesn't really die off. Armor, when an opponent strikes your target, if it's got armor, it'll survive by however many, like, it'll subtract however many your armor is from the attack. So say if you have a unit with 2 health and +1 armor, and the opponent has a 2 attacking unit, your unit will survive by 1 health because it subtracted 1 attack for the armor. So pretty interesting there. And Judgment, when this unit is attacked, it deals X damage to the attacker. So whenever a unit is hit, extra damage will be dealt to it. However, it's X damage, so that can vary. So interesting stuff there. Ninjas. Ninjas are a trick faction using amazing speed and return to the hand tricks, bounce, to surprise enemies and gain advantage in combat. They use the following unique mechanics. First Strike. This unit deals combat damage before the opponent. Stealth, which is, I'm not going to go into because you guys already know that. It's in the live. And Evasive, can move again after attacking. So pretty good stuff there. Stealth, I'm not going to go into because you already know. First Strike, this unit deals combat damage before the opponent. So basically, whatever whatever unit has First Strike will attack first. It will deal damage before the opponent even gets to attack, so that could be a little tricky. And Evasive, can move again after attacking, sort of like a ninja-only Rampage. So, not too heavily featured in the ninja faction, but it is there. Moving on, moving on. One moment. From there, we move on to the Vikings. Cut off on your screen there, but essentially, they're all about the combat potency, strengthening their units, and giving them devastating damage abilities. They use Freeze, now prevents the target from attacking or moving for 1 turn. Frozen units also deal combat damage after the opponent strikes first. Chain Lightning, of course, unchanged from the live version, so I'm not going to go into that. And Thunder Strike deals damage to enemies in a cone in front and knocks them back 1 space. So there's a couple things in the Vikings that sort of need a little explanation. The Chain Lightning, again, not going to go into. It's unchanged. Freeze, of course, now has a more devastating impact, unlike the live version, where if you freeze something, it's just a slower unit. Freeze is like, you can't move at all in this version. You cannot move a step if your unit is frozen. And of course, with that being said, if your frozen unit is attacked, they won't have a chance to retaliate until after the opponent has striked first. So in a sense, it's sort of like a first strike, but also you can't move. So pretty devastating there if your units get frozen. It's more meaningful now. And Thunderstrike, a bit hard to explain in here. We'll probably go into more detail with it when we actually show off the Viking cards. But Thunderstrike deals damage to enemies in like a cone format. Again, hard to explain, but essentially not a lot of units have Thunderstrike, so it's not too stressful if you don't understand now. But essentially, say if a unit has Thunderstrike and it hits an opponent, it's going to be it's sort of hard to explain. It takes like the first like it takes the space in front of the unit, obviously where it's attacking, and then the two spaces above and below it, and multiply that to the row behind it. So again, sort of hard to explain from my words. We'll go into more detail when we show off some beta gameplay. Warlocks, they love direct damage. They love direct damage spells and dark magic. They can burn their enemies with fire and drain the life from them with the dark powers. They use the following mechanics: Lifesteal. When this unit deals damage, it heals itself for the amount dealt, which we kind of already see with Mordock. Of course, him having lifesteal in the current game. Explosive. When this unit deals damage, it also deals extra damage. Again, unchanged from live, so you guys already know how that works. And Inferno. At the start of your turn, deal massive damage to everything nearby, which is going to end up replacing the current Fire Aura currently in the game. So, Explosive we're not going to go too much into. Lifesteal, when this unit deals damage, it heals itself. So essentially, say if a unit with lifesteal has 2 attack, and it deals damage to a unit that has maybe 4 health, it'll drain the life that it attacks and heals itself. So it will technically take off 2 from the opponent and give 2 to itself, if damaged, of course. It can't just gain health. It caps off at its base health unless tampered with by a health spell. So pretty interesting that Lifesteal is getting a more defined ability and not just some crazy Mordock shenanigan that was currently in live now. And of course, Explosive we're not going to go too much into. Inferno, at the start of your turn, deal massive damage to everything nearby. So it's sort of unchanged from Fire Aura, except with Inferno, you're also getting damage dealt to your own stuff if you have a unit or anything positioned near the Inferno unit. So sort of a more devastating Fire Aura. Next, we move on to the pirates. Of course, there are thieving scoundrels who love treasure. When you use any dirty trick, they can win in combat. Pirates have exclusive access to gold-generating abilities and are debuff focused. They use the following mechanics. So, essentially, what they've got here is sort of another trick faction, but more in the sense of gold increase, ramping, and another important thing, debuff focus. Now, there are going to be a couple of cards in the faction I can tell you now that have that debuff, and that debuff will be pretty important for those running pirates. And we'll get more into that again when we go into the beta gameplay coming up in the next few days. So, of course, they use treasure, gain next gold instead of your next turn. You guys already know that as invest or treasure in the live version as well, so that's sort of unchanged. Stunning prevents an enemy from moving, attacking, or counterattacking from one turn, so sort of like freeze. But of course exclusive to pirates. And riposte. Oh my lord, I can never pronounce this correctly. If that's, I'm gonna say that it's riposte. I'm sorry if I just butchered that again, but I can't pronounce it. Riposte deals double damage on counterattack. So sort of interesting stuff there. I would say the pirates aren't the most exciting faction, but definitely one that can still be pretty top tier, especially with the gold abilities. Well, maybe not top tier is the right word. They're a very good faction, despite how they may look now. The riposte is very interesting. The stun, sort of like freeze for pirates, and the treasure, of course, you guys already know. So not too, not too much is changing there except for the stun and riposte. And technically, even the stun is another, like I said, version of freeze. So really, pirates haven't changed all too much, which is somewhat good. They're not going to be crazy, though, I can assure you that. And with that being said, we'll hop right into our last faction, the Druids. Now, here's where where things start to get a little interesting here. Druids are the new faction, of course. So this is the first time we're seeing any sort of things released about Druids. Possess an affinity with nature and the creatures of the forest. They can absorb damage from allies with their spiritual bonds and summon ferocious beasts to come to their aid. Druid mechanics favor ephemeral units and aggressive plays, completing the circle of life, utilizing the following mechanics. Spirit Link, any combat damage dealt to your allies is redirected to this unit. Rampage, this unit can move and attack a second unit after the first. Again, unchanged from live, so essentially now the Druids are getting this Rampage ability now. They're sort of taking it for themselves. And companion, which units with companion can be played next to any other unit you have on the board. So sort of a better rally per se. It's actually like pretty much rally in the current version. So they're utilizing a lot of things here, and I think having these defined druids is very sort of, you know, aggressive play style in my opinion, which is fine. The game there certainly will need that. Um, but it's also sort of like a little more trickly health based with the spirit link, any combat damage. So basically, if I hit something, um, but it doesn't, but something else has spirit link, that spirit link unit will actually absorb the damage from the unit that is being tacked. So essentially, they remain unharmed while the spirit link unit takes damage. So that's pretty interesting there. And like I said, companion is pretty much the same thing as existing rally and rampage. Bleh, excuse me, unchanged from live. They're just sort of solidifying it as their own. So overall, a lot of good things coming from this news announcement. Certainly a lot to take in. Certainly a lot to get excited about, in my opinion. And yeah, like I said sort of earlier in hints of the video, we will have beta gameplay coming up over the next several days where you guys can see some of what's going on in the game in action for yourselves. And again, big things happening from the return of 20 HP, a sixth new faction, and just a complete overhaul of the game. It's bound to be a certainly exciting update. And with that being said, guys, I think we're gonna call this video to an end. If you guys enjoyed, please make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, and comment down below your thoughts on this patch. And of course, stay tuned if you are a subscriber. If you aren't a subscriber, click that subscribe button because we're gonna be having gameplay of what this new overhaul, this patch, this beta gameplay coming over the next few days. And if you have any questions, until then, hit me up in the comment section below. It's always good to hear what you guys have to say about the game, especially about this update too. It's certainly buzzing a lot of excitement. So with that being said, guys, until the next time, stay gaming.